Nowhere in his books do we find traditional government. Real power is in the hands of the Zaibatsus, the multinationals.
The Zaibatsus, the multinationals that shaped the course of human history, had transcended old barriers. Hives with cybernetic memories, vast single organisms, their DNA coded in silicon. Kingpins in a given industry would be both more and less than people. A gradual and willing accommodation of the machine, the system, the parent organism.
I think we're moving toward a world where all the consumers under a certain age would probably tend to identify more with their consumer status or with the products they consume than they would with with any sort of antiquated notion of nationality. We're increasingly sort of interchangeable.
When William Gibson's visions were published, they struck sparks in the real world. Scientists and hackers had found a future they couldn't wait to build, couldn't wait to live in, couldn't wait to sell. William Gibson, godfather of cyberpunk, found himself in a situation where he was actually programming the future. Never before had science fiction literature determined the way people thought and spoke about new technology. This synthesis of fiction and fact proved to be of value to each. And now, cyberpunk is a movement, looking set to blast toward the millennium.
At a certain point, I saw cyberpunk jump from being a literary description to being a description of something in the real world. I think the New York Times used it in a headline last year, "Cyberpunks do something," and I said, "What?" And I thought they were referring to this group of writers I'm associated with, but in fact they were referring to outlaw hackers who had broken into someone's data bank. And I believe Time magazine used it as well in that sense. So which is an interesting thing to see it. I was happy to see it take on this new life in the world outside, because then I felt I wouldn't be quite so saddled with it.
Gibson's image of computer cowboys hacking a perilous post-humanist lifestyle on a new technological frontier gave hackers and technophiles an identity and a set of ennobling myths. After reading Neuromancer, hackers started to realize that they were, in fact, and probably had always been, cyberpunks.
Cyberpunk is a person who takes navigational control over the cybernetic electronic equipment and uses it not for the army, not for the government, not for the Lufthansa airline, but for his or her own personal purpose.
Cyberpunks are many things. One thing they all have in common is the delight taken in the use of advanced technology against those who would try to restrict, direct, or control that technology. Perhaps this is why cyberpunks have been known to operate on the fringe of legality. In some cases, the laws to restrict their activities have not yet been written. In others, the laws exist and cyberpunks are squarely outside them. The identities of such individuals must naturally be concealed.
I'm poking around in people's databases. I deal in software. I trade. I don't crack. I'm not that good. But I deal with it, trade with people, and poke around in databases, play with phones. Well, I make free phone calls everywhere. You name it. Europe, Asia, the United States, Cuba. I called Russia once. They didn't like that very much. And I had first started doing it just to call. But now I'll do that so I can reach somebody's database or so I can trade software. It's just, it adds on an extra dimension. So I don't have to pay for the phone call. I'm not paying for the software. I'm not paying to get into their database. So it just, it makes it easier for me, and so I can do it more.
You just do it for the challenge of getting in, because it's like the big game, because the people who own the system, they hire so-called professionals to set up security, so to keep people like us out. So it's a game. You want to see how smart they are. And, if you can beat them at their own game, you get in, you look around. If it's boring, you leave. Generally, most people leave. You have some malicious types who like to go in and screw things up. But, I just do it for the challenge. It's fun.
These kids in the Catskills, they were like 14 and 15 years old. They were into trading software, and they had a computer bulletin board system. And they would put up codes for phreaking to make free phone calls, and people would put up numbers of databases, and somebody put up an AT&T database number. And so one kid who was good with hacking into systems got on, and he got into a menu that he didn't know what it was, and he just started poking around with it, and the next thing he knew, people came to his house, and he didn't know what happened, and they told him that he had moved a satellite. He moved a telecommunications satellite out of orbit, and they all freaked out. I mean, they came to his house going, "You moved a satellite," and, he was like 14 years old, so his parents were like passing out because there were federal agents in his house, and he was shitting bricks, and the federal agents came in, confiscated all his computer equipment, and scared the living daylights out of him, and he thought he was going away to jail for the rest of his life, and he just turned everybody in.
So by definition, in a bureaucracy, any individual who thinks for herself is considered a hooligan or a smartass or a know-it-all or a troublemaker. The creative child is the troublemaker. So by definition, an innovative person, particularly in technology with computers, anyone who gets in there, uses the computer for his or her own purpose, is by definition a hooligan, a punk.
Cyberpunk is made up of kids, freaks, or obsessive technophiles. And like any other movement, it has its stars.
Welcome to Comlink Satellite Service. You have selected faster than light news speed for today, 24 October, 2144.
For the past year, the office of the president of the NAU has been occupied by a clone imposter. Attorney General Priscilla Nagel issues this statement.
We are all relieved that the real President Clark has been freed from her year-long imprisonment, and are certainly grateful to Kyle Swan for rescuing her. But the fact remains that Mr. Swan is still a fugitive from justice. He should be issuing his statements from a jail cell.
President Clark was quick to reply.
Kyle Swan was framed. The charges against him were trumped up by my clone imposter. Kyle is innocent.
The real question is, why was I framed? Who or what wanted me out of the way?
You're watching Sleepcore. Pleasant dreams.
Sally, watch our butts.
Sledge, the box. Break it. Bust it up.
Guard.
Damn it, the picture said there weren't any guards.
I'll take him out.
No, it's too noisy. Sal, can you drop him?
Him? No problem.
Oh, who goes there? Just what are you doing? She did it, come on. You okay?
I'll be fine.
Let's go.
Sledge, another box, please.
It's over. Let's get out of here now.
Cyberpunk equals latest fiction cult. Cyberpunk equals man slowly evolving into machine.
Cyberpunk is high-tech meets low-life. Cyberpunk is a term coined for a book by Gibson, Neuromancer, the book that really started it all.
Writing styles came together and this sort of school of writing, of thought, perhaps more than actual writing style, evolved, of sort of a street-level science fiction.
The whole punkiness of the characters, these smart people with access to high technology grabbing what they can, it caught on really fast.
About the middle of the 1980s, a couple of writers, notably Bruce Sterling and William Gibson, kind of jumped the future forward, and it was dirty.
Hello, teenage America.
Research laboratories have caught up with and are now overtaking science fiction.
In Cyberpunk, you get a direct invasion, a literal invasion of the body. You have implants in the brain.
Cyberpunk is the consumer's wet dream as well. It's not just about computers. If you're unhappy with your body, you just whip out into the body shop and buy bits for yourself, gorilla pectorals, or change your body completely.
If you've got something which is a specific genetic feature, the fact you've got 5 fingers or something like that, then that is potentially alterable.
The rate of change is so vast at the moment. Things are happening so quickly in the theoretical sciences and in technology that science fiction is having a job keeping up with it.
Filmmakers are not immune to the cyberpunk phenomenon.
It's about a time when people can store their brains in a computer and wait for a new body, sort of the next step up of body donor parts. So what it is, it's touching on the nerve of immortality. Because then really, as long as you can keep getting fresh bodies, you don't ever have to die.
Perhaps what's more relevant than actually keeping the intent than brain transplants is brain implants, which theoretically then should be able to interface with the brain. So it opens up whole realms of possibilities of little things you stick into yourself, stick it into your neck to teach yourself a foreign language or learn a new skill or whatever.
It's here, all of it. SF says it, and 10 years later it happens.
You never really write about the future. It has to be about the present.
SF has always been the genre of ideas. They're always slagged off when they appear, and almost immediately events follow them through. Gibson's predicted the virtual reality hoo-ha.
I thought it was a lot of nonsense. I had never heard of virtual reality. And then when you realize that this is something which is fact, it's happening, you know, these men are creating this, then that's always very exciting.
We had been wanting to do a cyber film for quite a while, and it came to us that there was a great story behind this technology coming into culture. As we blend with the machines that extend our minds and extend our bodies, what does that mean to culture? What does that mean to the way people communicate?
In here we can be anything we want to be. I'll see you on the inside.
What does that mean to the way people have sex? What does it mean to all those different questions? And that's some of the things that we deal with in this film.
What stories are the cyberpunk writers interfacing with now?
Gibson and George Alec Effinger have both discussed the biological implications of things like SynStim and little computer jack-ins that they all wear behind their ear. Ian MacDonald's just produced a most impressive book.
In this society, that the head is severed, connected into some sort of biotechnological matrix and kept alive.
Ian's decided to go plunge straight into this notion of the organic future, which I think is the way science fiction generally, I think, reflects to some degree the current preoccupations with real science.
A transgenic animal is just the name we use for an organism in which you have inserted a piece of DNA.
Read a book rather like it's like a film unfolding. I see it as a succession of frames, the whole story, and I freeze frame incidents and make sketches.
We might be entering, in the next 50 years, we might actually have a post-human society.
You wouldn't have to eat, you just stand like a plant in your garden, start naked, and develop your own food.
If you don't like your eyes, we'll just slap in a new set.
Sort of gigabytes, 2-4 megabytes and gigabyte size files. Try and download them through a rip, they just blow it away.
Designer drugs, kinky sex, and playing games. That's science fiction, the whole thing. That's the whole thing wrapped up.
You're watching Sleepcore, media for insomnia.
You know, I think the thing that sets human beings apart from other creatures is a built-in dissatisfaction. There's an itch that we have that can't be scratched. Our efforts to scratch it have created civilization, which is essentially the practice of trying to adapt the environment to us rather than adapting ourselves to the environment.
We decided long ago that we were terrified by nature and that we needed to be more powerful so that we weren't threatened by nature so much. Technology means power to us. It symbolizes potentially immortality. This is the fantasy that somehow we can transcend our horrible condition of being human through these shiny black boxes.
You become a god. You have the power to change reality. You have the power to create reality. When you look on the TV, and is anything you see real? Nobody knows anymore. With some of the digital imagery, with some of the retouching, some of the 3D animation, what you see, it isn't real. And with this technology, it lets me be a god, and it lets me create my reality.
I'm getting what is rightfully mine, Mac. Tarita! I'm with you!
We like the idea of a controlled environment only because you can control whether there's pollution, you can control what's in the ocean, control what's on the sand, the beach. It's just a cleaner environment. They've had a lot of experience to change things.
In a sense, tourism begins as a kind of controlled environment. Middle-class people could now travel and see the world. It used to be that going to exotic places required a certain hardiness of spirit, and now it was a more controlled experience, less random, with guides to take you. And now that's been brought home. I mean, you don't have to go to the pyramids anymore. The pyramids can come to you.
You know, I've worked so hard all the week, you know, and last Sunday before last was such a birthday day and all.
At Epcot Center at Disney World or in Las Vegas, you can see reproductions of all those things, and they're ever so much nicer than what you can see in the real world. That you can have a nice sort of dinner in a Mexican pyramid and watch the volcano explode at just the right time, and you know, you're guaranteed of having the experience that you were expecting.
Seems to me that now what we have is the capacity to literally create the environment that we want to be in. That is, to make available environments that would not be normally available to most people.
I mean, it's an extension of something like a shopping mall or something like the Metrodome.
people who are most offended by the results of mechanistic technology are also the ones who most vehemently oppose biotechnology and nanotechnology, which are really the options, which are really nature-based technologies. You know, we're moving from the industrial model to the biological model.
Well, there are individuals who think that cyberspace is unnatural and that computers in some sense are artificial. But you have to realize that our brain is in some sense a tremendous computer. And it may take many centuries before we have true robots that can simulate the functions of the brain. But there is a continuum.
We will get to the point where we can simulate a person and their reactions so well because we'll understand the chemical, the formulation of the body, and all that so well that maybe we will have computers that are basically people.
The reason why we don't have mechanical butlers and mechanical maids, the reason is pattern recognition. Computers can see, but they don't recognize. They don't understand.
I don't think robots are going to replace human beings. I think what we're going to see is more of a merger of human beings and robots to become some kind of combined organism. In the next few years, we're going to start seeing household robots appear. And they have to be fairly sophisticated. They have to be able to move around a house without bumping into things and knocking things over. And they have to learn their surroundings. So we're going to see a spectrum from very stupid to very smart.
I definitely think that artificial intelligence it's already starting. It's already happening, and it will take over. It definitely will take over. And I don't think that man is really ready to accept that.
The idea of transferring human consciousness from the brain to a machine of some kind puzzles many people because they tend to think of themselves, because of religious ideas, as essentially a soul. They think there's some non-physical spiritual matter inside this human body. And so if you talk about transferring personality from the brain to a computer, they don't see how that's possible.
The brain is a combination, unless you're a deeply religious person and you believe that the spirit is something other than the human existence, is biology, chemistry, and electronics, combined in a very unique way. The brain is a finite system of neurons. Once you figure it out, once you got a template for it, it's just a question of running the map. Piece of cake.
Obviously, in a human life, there's too much information to fully assimilate, but you can make a good educated guess. That's what artificial life's all about, too. A good educated guess. So can we download our personalities? Yeah, maybe. Uploading them is a different story, though. Downloading them, I think so. We'll get there eventually.
Right now, we're not in very good control of our impulses. We tend to get angry and envious and jealous and have wars all the time. If we made some changes to our genetics and our neurochemistry, we might be able to control those things. And we're beginning to see just the bare beginnings of that in some of the chemicals people are using. Like Prozac is a very crude example of something which moderates personality. But I think we'll see far more sophisticated chemical control of our brains, which we can choose ourselves as individuals and choose who we want to be.
At the edge of our culture, people are starting to view drugs as information. You take a particular combination of chemicals to create a particular response in your brain and your nervous system. And you find that response perhaps useful in getting a different view of reality.
These people no longer feel constrained by the social rules of the past.
If you take ecstasy, it takes your ego away, so you have a better time relating with people and understanding what people have to like say or do. Like, even if it's just for a little while, that experience can change like your whole life. The first time I took ecstasy, I saw people in a whole different light. I saw them like all as good, and like everybody else was on ecstasy too, so they were all good.
Like optical machines that sort of like tap into the visual cortex and sort of like stimulate your brain. When you're high, it's like your mind all of a sudden, it's like, it plays, just what you see, you exaggerate. Everything you see is exaggerated.
Chocolate, a lot of chocolate, sugar, white, synthetic sugar, MDMA, ecstasy.
The key to a human psychology is to know how to operate your brain, and that means to be able to expand consciousness. And in the past, they, the psychiatrists and the ministers and priests, that were either sane or you're crazy. And throughout human history, they, the controllers, want to scare us. There's sanity and what's real, and that's what we're in charge of. And anything else is sinful, psychotic, evil, daft, hallucinatory.
And the mind itself becomes a controlled environment. As we move in and begin to understand it more and map it, this terrain becomes something we can handle.